The war began on a Tuesday, not that Tuesdays meant anything to us Vok'tar. But the humans seemed oddly fixated on pointing this out later. Started on a Tuesday, finished on a Thursday. One of their commanders would joke, laughing that peculiar barking laugh they make. 2 of their planetary rotations to dismantle an empire that had stood for 6,000 years. But I'm getting ahead of myself. My name is Krell, and I was a strategic analyst for the Vok'tar Dominion's 3rd Fleet. Note the past tense. These days I work in waste reclamation on Outpost Gamma 9, sorting through recycling bins, and trying very, very hard not to think about what happened. The therapy sessions help, sometimes. The thing you need to understand about the Vok'tar Dominion is that we were good at war. Not great, maybe, but solidly competent. We'd conquered 47 systems over 3 centuries, absorbed 16 different species into our empire, and developed a reputation for methodical, overwhelming force. Our Tatsu doctrine was simple. Identify target, surround target, pulverize target, move on. It worked beautifully. For 300 years it worked beautifully. Then we found Earth. Oh, we'd known about the humans for a while. Hard to miss them, really. The way they kept launching those primitive radio signals into space like cosmic smoke signals saying, "Hey everyone, we're here and we have absolutely no idea how dangerous the universe is." We'd monitored them for decades, watched them stumble through their industrial age, split the atom, reach their own moon with chemical rockets. Adorable stuff, really. Our xenobiologists found them fascinating. Bipedal mammals, oxygen breathers, carbon-based, nothing particularly special except for one weird quirk. They were persistence predators. They literally used to chase their prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. What kind of insane evolutionary path produces that? High Command didn't care about evolutionary quirks. They saw a species with exactly 0 faster-than-light capability. No energy shields, no plasma weapons, no orbital defense platforms worth mentioning. They saw an easy conquest. Resource-rich planet, decent location, minimal defenses. The paperwork practically filled itself out. Admiral Vok'tar, may his atoms drift forever in the void, was chosen to lead the operation. 300 warships. The largest fleet we'd assembled in 50 years. Overkill, obviously. But High Command wanted to make a statement. The humans would be our showcase conquest, proof that the Dominion's reach was expanding, that our golden age hadn't passed. I was assigned to the flagship, running tactical projections. My models predicted total victory within 6 planetary rotations, minimal casualties, standard occupation protocols. The simulation ran perfectly every single time. The first sign that something was wrong came during our approach to their star system. We dropped out of hyperspace at the edge, standard procedure. Gave them the usual ultimatum: surrender. Accept integration into the Dominion. Maintain your local governance under our supervision. Pay reasonable taxes. Everyone stays alive and happy. We delivered this speech 47 times before. Usually species responded in one of 3 ways: immediate surrender, desperate negotiation attempts, or panicked military mobilization. The humans did none of these things. They laughed. Not metaphorically. Their response transmission, sent from a place called Geneva on Earth, was literally just 87 seconds of humans laughing. Different humans, different laughs. Male voices, female voices, young, old, all different types of laughter. Chuckling, giggling, howling, cackling, then silence. Then a single sentence in perfectly translated Vok'tar. "Come on then. Let's dance." Admiral Vok'tar found this amusing. "Primitive bravado," he said, his sensory stalks quivering with what I now recognize as catastrophically misplaced confidence. "They'll break quickly. Prepare the bombardment formation." We moved in system. Standard approach. Nothing fancy. 3 battle groups. Overlapping fields of fire, sufficient firepower to crack a moon. The humans had maybe 30 combat-capable vessels. Crude fusion drive affairs with kinetic weapons and what appeared to be nuclear missiles. Adorable. They didn't even try to stop us at the outer system. They just watched. We could see their tracking systems painting us, their communications chatter increasing, but no military response. Their ships stayed near Earth and Mars, holding position. "See?" Vok'tar said. "They know they're outmatched. They're trying to decide whether to surrender or make a symbolic last stand. Either way, this ends quickly." That's when the asteroids started moving. Small ones at first. Rocks the size of transport shuttles, accelerating from the belt on trajectories that looked random until you ran the numbers and realized they were all converging on our fleet's projected path. Chemical rockets strapped to space debris, the most primitive form of propulsion imaginable, and they'd launched hundreds of them weeks ago. We destroyed them easily. Our point defense systems were designed for this, but it meant we had to slow down, adjust our formation, divert resources to tracking and eliminating debris. Annoying but not threatening. Then the bigger rocks came. Kilometer-long asteroids, moving faster, dozens of them. We had to break formation, focus more energy on defense. One of them got through, clipped a destroyer's shields, caused minor damage. First blood to the humans. Technically, though, calling it a victory would be generous. Vok'tar was irritated now, not amused. Enough games. All ships, maximum acceleration, will be in bombardment range in 4 rotations. Let's show them what real firepower looks like. We accelerated. The fleet surged forward, a wall of metal and energy, unstoppable, inevitable. The humans had to know they'd lost. Their little tricks might delay us, might even destroy a few ships, but the outcome was certain. That's when things got weird. Their communications went silent, completely silent. Every transmitter, every broadcast, every satellite signal just stopped, like they'd powered down their entire civilization. We'd never seen anything like it. Species usually got louder as you approached, more desperate, more frantic. This was the opposite. Sensor anomalies. My assistant Trev reported, his voice uncertain. Multiple contacts appearing throughout the inner system. They're not ships, or they don't read like ships, but there's something there. Define something, I said, pulling up the data. Unknown. They're cold, almost invisible to thermal scans, minimal energy signatures, but mass readings suggest they're large. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands, scattered through near-Earth space. Before I could respond, the first mine went off. Not near us. Near a frigate in Battle Group 2, 8,000 kilometers to our port side. The explosion was wrong. Too bright, too hot, too much energy for any conventional explosive. And the electromagnetic pulse that followed knocked out the frigate's shields and half its systems. Nuclear weapon, I said, shocked. They're using nuclear weapons in space. Trev looked at me like I'd grown extrasensory stalks. That's insane. The radiation, the debris field. They'll contaminate their own orbital space for centuries. Tell them that, I muttered, watching as 3 more mines detonated, 2 missing their targets but 1 catching a destroyer perfectly, overwhelming its shields and punching through the hull. The humans had turned their near-Earth environment into a minefield. Not a sophisticated one, just crude nuclear devices and kinetic kill vehicles. Hidden and waiting, scattered through millions of cubic kilometers of space. It was wasteful, inefficient, self-destructive, and absolutely terrifying in its implications. They were willing to wreck their own planetary neighborhood just to hurt us. All ships, active scanning, maximum intensity. Vok'tar ordered. Find every mine, map every contact, clear us a path, reduce speed if necessary. We slowed. We had to. Blundering through a nuclear minefield at high speed would be suicide, even for ships as advanced as ours. The humans had forced us to choose between caution and momentum, and we chose caution. That's when their ships finally moved, not toward us, away from us. Every human vessel in the inner system fired engines and started accelerating outward, perpendicular to our approach vector, spreading out in a wide dispersal pattern. They're running, someone said. No, I said, studying the trajectories. They're repositioning. But for what? I got my answer 6 minutes later when Earth's moon exploded. Not the whole moon, just one side of it facing us, carved into a massive crater by what must have been every mining explosive the humans possessed, detonated simultaneously in a carefully calculated pattern. And from that crater, accelerated by the blast, came a cloud of debris moving at a significant fraction of light speed. Rocks, dust, ice, regolith. Billions of tons of lunar material turned into the universe's largest shotgun blast, spreading out in a cone that encompassed our entire fleet. Evasive maneuvers, Vok'tar screamed. All ships emergency thrust, get out of the impact zone. We scattered. 300 warships, breaking formation, engines screaming, desperately trying to avoid the oncoming wall of high-velocity debris. Most of us made it. Some didn't. I watched 12 ships get shredded, their shields overwhelmed by sheer kinetic energy, hulls punctured by rocks moving fast enough to turn any impact into a fusion reaction. And through it all I could hear laughter on the radio. The humans were laughing again. One of their admirals, a woman named Victoria Kane from somewhere called Australia, sent us a message that still haunts my dreams. Her voice was cheerful, almost friendly, like she was commenting on pleasant weather. "G'day Dominion, welcome to Sol System." That was the warning shot. "You gentlemen fancy continuing this, or would you prefer to turn around and pretend this whole embarrassing situation never happened?" No judgment either way. Vok'tar, his pride wounded, his fleet damaged, responded exactly as I feared he would. "We will burn your planet to bedrock." Victoria Kane's reply was immediate. "Yeah, thought you might say that." "All right then, boys and girls, you heard the man. Gloves off. Let's show these colonizing bastards why we invented the word overkill." That's when the real nightmare began. The human ships that had spread out through the system started launching something. Not missiles, not bombs, just cargo pods. Thousands of them, simple metal containers, fired in every direction on seemingly random trajectories. We tracked them, obviously, but they weren't threatening, weren't armed, were barely even moving by military standards. "What are they doing?" Trev asked. I didn't know. I ran simulations, analyzed trajectories, tried every model I could think of. Nothing made sense. Then the pods started opening and the humans inside started building. They were constructing weapons platforms in open space, using the pods as raw materials, working in vacuum suits with nothing but handheld tools and portable fusion reactors. We watched in disbelief as they assembled railguns, missile batteries, laser arrays, using prefabricated components they'd launched hidden inside civilian cargo containers. "They're using their own people as guided munitions," I whispered. "They're turning their soldiers into mobile weapons platforms." "That's inefficient," Trev said. "Why not just launch the weapons?" "Because the weapons need to be aimed," I realized. "Because automated systems can be jammed or hacked. Because humans are adaptable in ways computers aren't. They're betting their own lives that they can build and deploy these platforms faster than we can destroy them." And they were winning that bet. We destroyed hundreds of the platforms, but thousands more kept appearing. Humans working frantically in vacuum, assembling weapons while dodging our fire, launching attacks from positions that changed every few minutes. It was chaos. Unpredictable. Impossible to model. Our doctrine had no answer for this. We were designed to fight organized fleets with predictable tactics. This was like fighting a swarm of insects that each carried a plasma cannon. "Reform the fleet," Vok'tar ordered, trying to regain control. "Concentrate fire, establish overlapping shields, prepare for organized bombardment of Earth." We proceed with the original plan. But we couldn't. Every time we tried to form up, human attacks forced us apart. Every time we concentrated on one threat, 3 more appeared elsewhere. They were everywhere and nowhere, fighting without formation, without central command, just thousands of individual units making their own decisions, adapting to changing circumstances faster than our command structure could process. One of their soldiers, I watched him specifically, spent 40 minutes building a railgun platform while his position was under constant fire. He took 3 hits, his suit compromised, leaking atmosphere, but he kept working. When the platform was complete, he fired 17 shots. Destroyed one of our cruisers, then pushed himself away from the platform just before we vaporized it. Last I saw, he was tumbling through space, using a handheld thruster to adjust his trajectory toward another cargo pod. He was probably going to build another platform. They were all going to build another platform. "Admiral," I said quietly, "we need to withdraw. We can't win this." Vok'tar spun on me, his sensory stalks rigid with fury. "We have 300 ships. They have primitive technology and suicidal tactics. We are the Vok'tar Dominion." "We were," I said. "We were the Dominion before we encountered a species that straps nuclear weapons to asteroids and uses their own moon as ammunition. We need to leave. Now." He didn't listen. Nobody listened. And that's why, when the humans finally launched their real counterattack, we were still there, still fighting, still believing we could win. That's why I'm still alive to tell this story. That's why I sort recycling on Outpost Gamma 9. That's why I wake up screaming, because what happened next makes everything I've described sound like a pleasant afternoon. The turning point came when their battleships arrived. I say battleships, but that's not quite accurate. The humans didn't have battleships in any traditional sense. What they had were converted civilian vessels, cargo haulers and colony ships, and mining platforms, strapped with armor plating and weapons that looked like they'd been assembled in someone's garage, which I learned later many of them had. The largest one was called Defiant Response, A former asteroid mining ship from the belt, 3 kilometers long, shaped like a giant metal potato with engines strapped to one end and what appeared to be an entire naval shipyard welded to the other. It shouldn't have been able to move, let alone fight. It accelerated toward our fleet at speeds that should have torn it apart. That vessel is not structurally sound, Trev reported, studying the scans. The stress fractures alone should cause catastrophic failure at those acceleration levels. Tell them that, I said, watching as Defiant Response opened fire with weapons I couldn't even classify. Magnetic accelerators, chemical rockets, laser arrays, plasma cannons, and what looked like someone had mounted an experimental particle beam to the hull using industrial adhesive and hope. Nothing matched. Nothing was standard issue. It was like watching a weapons catalog explode and reassemble itself into a nightmare. And it worked. One of our battle cruisers, the Pride of Vok'tar, took a direct hit from something the humans called a kinetic penetrator. Fancy name for a depleted uranium rod accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed. It punched through our shields like they were decorative curtains, through the armor like it was paper, through 17 decks, out the other side, and kept going until it hit a destroyer behind us. One shot. 2 ships critically damaged. How? Vok'tar whispered. How do they have this much firepower? I pulled up the analysis. They don't, sir. Not individually. But they've networked everything. Every platform, every ship, every weapon is sharing targeting data, coordinating fire, concentrating on weak points. They're fighting like a hive mind, except each node is making independent tactical decisions. That's impossible. The processing power required. The communication lag. The coordination. They're not using computers, sir. They're using people. Every weapon platform has a human operator making real-time decisions, communicating with other humans, adapting to battlefield conditions. It's inefficient as hell, but it's too chaotic for our tactical algorithms to predict. Another explosion rocked the flagship. Warning lights cascaded across every console. We'd taken damage, serious damage, from a coordinated strike by 7 different platforms firing simultaneously at our shield generators. All ships. Combat dispersal pattern 7. Vok'tar ordered. We fight our way out, regroup at the heliopause. Reassess. Translation. We were running. The retreat should have been orderly. We'd practiced this. 300 ships falling back in coordinated groups, covering each other, maintaining defensive formations. Standard doctrine. The humans didn't let us. They'd somehow predicted our fallback routes, positioned their forces perfectly, turned our organized retreat into a running battle through a debris field of our own destroyed vessels. And they were faster than us, more maneuverable, willing to take insane risks that no sane commander would authorize. I watched a human fighter, a tiny single-seat craft that probably cost less than our waste recycling systems, perform a maneuver that generated enough G-forces to turn a Vok'tar pilot into purple paste. The human inside apparently survived, because 30 seconds later that same fighter crippled one of our frigates with a missile strike. What are they made of? Someone screamed over the command channel. Spite and caffeine, apparently. Came a response I later learned was from one of our intercepted human transmissions. They were joking, while fighting, while dying. They were making jokes. Victoria Kane's voice cut through the chaos again, still cheerful, still friendly, still absolutely terrifying. Dominion fleet, this is Admiral Kane. You're losing ships faster than you can count them. Your formation is compromised, your morale is shot, and you're about 16 minutes away from being in range of our Mars defense grid, which I should mention is significantly nastier than anything we've thrown at you so far. So here's my offer, one time only. Surrender now, and you all get to go home with your lives and a really embarrassing story. Keep fighting and we'll keep killing you until we run out of ammunition or you run out of ships. Your call, mates. Vok'tar actually considered it. I could see the calculation in his eyes, the pride warring with survival instinct. We'd lost 47 ships already, nearly a sixth of our fleet, and we hadn't even scratched their planetary defenses. Then one of our destroyers, the Relentless, scored a direct hit on a human civilian station orbiting Earth. 3,000 non-combatants died in an instant, vaporized by plasma fire. It was an accident, a stray shot during the chaos. But it happened. The laughter stopped. Every human transmission went silent for exactly 15 seconds. I counted them, each one feeling like an eternity. Then Victoria Kane came back on, and her voice had changed. No more cheerfulness. No more jokes. Right then. You just killed civilians. That was the line. You crossed it. No more playing nice. We've been fighting for 2 hours. Trevor tested to no one in particular. This was them playing nice? Kane continued, her voice cold enough to freeze hydrogen. All units, authorization code Omega Black 7. Operational restrictions are lifted. Rules of engagement are now win. I don't care how. Battle Group 7. Deploy the experimental package. Science Division. You're cleared to field test anything that looks promising. Engineering Corps, if it explodes and you can point it at the enemy, use it. No limits. No restrictions. Show them what happens when they make us stop laughing. I didn't understand what that meant until the first human ship rammed us. Not accidentally, deliberately. A damaged frigate called Indomitable Will. Its weapons offline. Engines barely functional. Adjusted course and accelerated directly into one of our cruisers at maximum thrust. The collision destroyed both ships instantly, along with 2 more vessels caught in the debris field. They're using ships as weapons, I said, numb with shock. They're kamikaze attacking with crewed vessels. No, Trev corrected, studying his console. Life signs evacuated before impact. They sent the crew off in escape pods, then remotely piloted the ship into the target. They're using their own vessels as guided missiles. More ships came. Damaged human vessels, systems failing, turned into kinetic kill vehicles. Some worked, some didn't, but each one forced us to divert resources, break formation, react instead of act. Then the experimental weapons arrived. The first one was called, I kid you not, the Angry Flashlight. A converted deep space telescope with an experimental laser system that shouldn't have been weapon capable. The humans apparently disagreed with that assessment. They'd overloaded every safety system, bypassed every regulator, and turned it into something that could punch holes in our capital ships. It fired once, carved through a battleship's shields and armor like they were smoke, then exploded from thermal overload. But that one shot had done enough damage to cripple the vessel. They're using prototypes, I realized. Experimental technology they haven't even finished testing. They're field testing superweapons on us. The second weapon was worse, something called a gravity hammer, a device that created localized gravitational anomalies. Temporary, unstable, barely controllable, but effective enough to crush 3 of our ships like empty beverage containers before it destabilized and imploded. The third weapon I still don't understand. Some kind of quantum probability manipulator that made our navigation systems report impossible locations, caused our weapons to misfire, made our shields fluctuate randomly. It probably violated 17 different laws of physics, but it worked long enough to throw our fleet into complete disarray. They're throwing everything at us, Vok'tar said, his voice hollow. Every weapon, every tactic, every crazy idea anyone ever had. Nothing is too experimental, too dangerous, too insane. They're escalating, I said. Every time we hurt them, they escalate. There's no upper limit. They'll keep going until either we're destroyed or they are. Then we destroy them first. All ships, concentrate fire on Earth. Maximum bombardment, full power. If we're going down, we're taking them with us. I should have stopped him, should have mutinied, should have done something, but I didn't. I was Vok'tar Dominion military, and I followed orders. 253 ships, all that remained of our fleet, turned toward Earth and prepared to fire everything we had. We never got the chance. The humans had been building something in the shadow of their moon hidden from our sensors, using the debris field from their earlier explosion as camouflage. Something massive, something that drew power from what appeared to be a temporary fusion reactor the size of a small city. When it fired, it lit up every sensor we had. A particle beam, coherent and focused, powerful enough to ionize the space between Earth and our fleet. It didn't destroy ships directly. It didn't have to. It superheated the plasma in their shield systems, caused feedback loops in our power grids, turned our own defensive systems into bombs. 18 ships exploded simultaneously. Another 43 went dark, systems fried, crews scrambling for emergency backups. What was that? Vok'tar screamed. I checked the readings, cross-referenced everything we knew about human technology, came up empty. Unknown, sir. It's not in any database. They invented it specifically for this battle. In 2 hours? They invented a super weapon in 2 hours? No, sir, I said quietly. They invented it in 200 years. They've been developing weapons and tactics and contingency plans since they first looked at the stars and wondered what else was out there. We're not fighting a primitive species. We're fighting a species that's been preparing for this exact scenario since before they could leave their own planet. The particle beam fired again. More ships died. Victoria Kane's voice returned. Still cold. Still merciless. Last chance, Dominion. Surrender or die, and before you answer, know this. The weapon you just experienced was built by graduate students at MIT as a thesis project. We have 17 more like it in various stages of completion. We have orbital platforms you haven't seen yet. We have ground installations that make our space defenses look friendly. And we have 4 billion very angry, very creative people who are currently competing to see who can come up with the most devastating way to kill you. She paused, letting that sink in. Your choice. Make it now. Vok'tar looked at me, at Trev, at the bridge crew, at the tactical display showing our fleet, what remained of it surrounded by human forces that seemed to multiply every minute. Open a channel, he said finally. We surrender. The surrender negotiations took 6 hours. The humans were surprisingly reasonable about it, all things considered. No executions, no torture, no revenge. They confiscated our weapons, impounded our ships, documented everything, then escorted us to the edge of their system with stern warnings never to return. Before we left, Victoria Kane sent me a personal message. Just me, specifically, because someone had identified me as the analyst who'd been arguing for retreat. Krell, right? You seem smarter than your boss. So I'm going to tell you something, and I want you to share it with everyone back home. You ready? I indicated I was. Humanity didn't want this war. We're not conquerors, we're not empire builders, we just want to be left alone to figure out our own path through the universe. But here's the thing about humans that you need to understand, we're really good at violence. We've been practicing on each other for our entire history. War isn't something we do reluctantly. It's something we've perfected through 10,000 years of continuous innovation. She leaned closer to the camera. You showed up expecting to fight a primitive species with crude weapons and simple tactics. What you actually fought was a civilization that turned warfare into an art form, a science, a sport, and a cultural obsession. We have museums dedicated to famous battles. We write poetry about war. We make entertainment about it. Children play games pretending to fight each other. Another pause. So here's my message for your Dominion. Leave us alone. Stay away from Sol System. Forget Earth exists. Because what you saw today, that was us being restrained. That was us pulling our punches because we didn't want to completely annihilate you. You want to see what happens when humanity stops playing nice and gets really truly genuinely nasty. Her smile was absolutely terrifying. Neither do we. So just stay away. Tell everyone. Spread the word. Humanity is off limits. We're the species that weaponizes our moon, uses our own ships as missiles, and builds superweapons for fun. We're the species that laughs in the face of overwhelming odds, then stops laughing and starts killing when you cross the line. The transmission ended. We limped home with a third of our fleet. The Vok'tar Dominion Council demanded explanations, investigations, accountability. Vok'tar was reassigned to a monitoring station in deep space. Most of the command staff took early retirement. I requested the transfer to waste reclamation. Because here's what I learned, what I try to explain to anyone who'll listen. Humans are terrifying not because they're strong but because they refuse to quit. Not because they have the best technology, but because they'll use absolutely anything as a weapon. Not because they're fearless, but because they're afraid and they fight anyway. They're terrifying because when you push them to the edge, when you make them stop laughing and start fighting for real, there is no bottom to what they'll do. No limit. No restriction. No rule they won't break if survival demands it. The war lasted 2 of their planetary rotations, Tuesday to Thursday. And in that time, they taught the Vok'tar Dominion a lesson we'll never forget. There are some species you just don't mess with. Humanity is at the very top of that list. These days I sort recycling and try not to think about lunar explosions or graduate students building superweapons or admirals who make jokes while destroying empires. Sometimes it works. Mostly it doesn't. But I do tell the story, every chance I get, to anyone who'll listen. Because the galaxy needs to know humans aren't the biggest species or the strongest or the most advanced. They're just the ones you really don't want to make angry. Trust me on that one. I learned it the hard way,